I'm Bear.
Hi, I'm Lou, and we're House of BLU.
Yes!
Yes, we nailed it! Finally.
Look at us go.
Welcome to episode 2 of Writing WORX. So today we are talking about concept creation, so how we get our ideas, how we develop those ideas, our own processes and approaches to all of that. So, shall I start? Or
Yeah.
Yeah? Alrighty. Gosh, concept creation. All my concepts are dreams. I have just really whack dreams. I have like a book that I write down random dreams that I have. Like I will wake up and I'm like, ugh, and I read it the next day and I'm just like,
Legible scroll.
what is this? I've had like, and like I'll write down a lot of the really weird details. I had one where like there were these kids who were all descendants of the original Salem witches, and so they had powers based on that. And then this one girl could like sense items because it had pumpkin seeds in it, like green pumpkin seeds were like this super rare.
It so specific.
Really, I know, and I just had like pumpkin seeds written down in my phone notes, and I was like, yeah, so most of mine come to me in dreams, and then I develop it from there. So the novel idea I'm working on at the moment started as a dream that has nothing to do with the concept that it is now at all. So it originally started off as a dream where it's the 1800s, this girl lived in London, she was like a duke's daughter, and there's a murder, and the groundskeeper of her like estate leaves a note for her in her sheet music because she plays piano, which was probably my subconscious being like, you could play this role if it was turned into a movie, which I've totally still kept. So he leaves a clue for her in her sheet music on who the killer was, and she gets that. And then I woke up and I was like, that could be something, and I wrote it down. And now somehow it's like this medieval Australia with all these abilities and all this lore, and it's like, when I had that original idea, I was kind of like, oh yeah, I really like this character. And then it was a matter of like, this world seems boring, I need a little bit more context. And then it was like, oh, what if it was an attempted murder on like a prince trying to create like a unity with this country? And then I was like, oh, that could work. If I was like, when would I actually want to set it? And then it had a phase where it was like a parallel universe to London because I wanted to change the fashion, and then I ended up changing so much that I was like, I might as well just create my entire own fantasy world. And then I remember sitting in a uni lecture and it was like, nobody ever writes about Australia, and I was like, guess what your girl's gonna do? So I changed the country to be Australian-esque, and it just sort of, I sit with ideas for a long time when I create my concept. So I get that original idea, that original dream or something that's super weird, and I just sit with that idea and I just work that idea and I go, you know, what else can I do? How can this expand? How can this become interesting? So once I had the parallel universe and had decided to make it its own land, I was like, well, what if we added abilities? That would be really cool. And then I was like, we're going to call them abilities because I hate the word powers so much. And then getting into the lore of all the abilities, and that's when you can start your world building once you've got a firmer concept. When I do my concept, I will generally come up with like the 3-act plot structure and vague dot points of like where book 2 and 3 would go, and then I'll world build a bit because I'll be like, okay, well, what kinds of things? And then as I world build, it often feeds into the concept, and then as I build the concept, it feeds into the world, and the two will sort of feed into each other and just keep growing each other, which is why I have those Bibles and all of that. So yeah, that's kind of how my concept creation works. I just have really whacked out dreams.
Whacked out dreams and overthinking. Mine is overthinking too. Mine is overthinking.
I didn't ask you to come for, but okay, Jesus.
I'm just summarizing what you just said. Mine is internal chatter and dialogues as well, but I don't, none of my dreams would be translatable into a novel. They're all surreal, abstract, no sound, just like really, it's a horror show. It's my dreams and headspace is like a Salvador Dali painting. Things are melting and like, I'm not okay, don't ask. But a lot of my ideas come from pretty words. Like I'll see a pretty word and I'm like, that's going to be the title. I always start with the title of my book. I've got 15 potential titles with all different storylines because I see a pretty word like there's a Japanese word called kintsugi, which is like when something's broken and you repair it with gold paint, because nothing is ever broken, you can recycle it. And I was just like, that's a pretty name. I wonder if I could write a book about that. What would the book be about? It's going to be a male protagonist or female protagonist? Maybe it's just going to be a gender non-binary protagonist. Okay, and then we just like map and map and map and map and map. And then sometimes it fizzles out and I'm like, you know what? Scrap this idea. I don't like it anymore. My headspace is a lot of internal dialogue and a lot of what ifs. But what if? And then writing it all down, because if you don't write it down 5 seconds later, I'm not gonna know. I'm not gonna remember it.
Yeah, valid.
And so it's like all of these like different connections and like breaking things down. And so the novel, one of the novels I'm working on at the moment, once again, it started as a whole different concept, and it has evolved since then. The only thing that's the same is the squad. There's 5 of them in the squad. And then I finished it, and 2017 brain was just like, and what if there were 3 dimensions? And I was just like, I just finished writing it, and they were like, it's not going to work if there's not 3 dimensions, because your inner writer will tell you. Like, if you don't know where the story's going, you will end up, if you don't know how a character will react, they'll tell you, because as an author, you end up talking to your characters and getting
I sat there for a month on one chapter of my novel because I was like, they need to have a fight, why are they not having a fight? And then my brain was like, make them air signs. And I was like, ah!
I was like going through like the cycle, and so I've started writing out all these different dimensions, and the more I wrote it out and the more concepts I came up with, like, what if this, what if this, what if this, oh my god, that links with that, and that links with that. It's almost like it was like pre-planned. Somewhere in the back of my subconscious is just like, it's meant to be this way. So you always have to listen to like the internal dialogue of, let's just explore what would happen without getting too caught up in different rabbit holes, because then you'll just be saying like, what if forever.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you do need like a cohesive, complete piece.
Yeah.
My other novel that I'm working on, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was staying in Seoul, and I could hear someone playing guitar, and I was just like...
I thought you were going to say the Ajashi. And I was like, that prompted your novel?
What the? Just rice cakes at midnight. Like, I was like half asleep, and I was just like, oh, he's playing me a song, and I was like pretending and fantasizing, because I do that, and I was just like, imagine what our love story would look like. And I was just like, imagine if there was a love story between like 2 artists who wanted to be together but then couldn't choose between their career and the one like choice of like chance of love that they had.
Oh, that old existential.
Yeah, well, they
boy.
kept on like looping back to each other, and she leaves to go to Hong Kong, and then she ends up coming back, and she ends up, there's just a whole lot of like looping. And then I got to the end, and my brain, as it does, was just like, what if you wrote an alternative ending? And there was like 2 endings, and the reader had to choose which one was the real one. And I was just like, yes.
Deny your audience closure.
Which I personally hate when authors do
I know,
that.
so do I,
just
but I
like,
love, because I same with theatre, I love ambiguous endings in theatre, but then I go and see a theatre piece and I'm like, just tell me how it ends. Yes, so concept creation. There's lots of different ways that you can create concepts, whether it comes to you in dreams, whether it is music prompting it, anything like that. I know I'll listen to music if I'm really stuck on a spot, and I'm like, got my playlist for my novel, and I'll listen to that, and I can be like, I can picture Jessamine running through a field, and I'm like, yes.
I think the biggest helpful tip is train yourself to notice stray thoughts. Like, what if? Because we know stories from like authors, like J.K. Rowling said that Harry Potter came to her as an idea on a train, and then it just kept on spiraling, and she was like, what if the school had 4 houses? What if this? And then Neil Gaiman being like, what if there was a chair and it turned into a werewolf? And like, it was like this whole thing, a whole speech that he did, and I was just like, if you want to be a writer, I think people who are natural born writers pick up on a lot more like what ifs, and then I'm just like, I should write that down. But if you want to be a writer and you're feeling like you're not having that connection with your internal dialogue, just when it does happen, make such a big deal out of it that your brain knows. Next time this happens, press record.
And keep it in the front of your mind. Like back when I worked at my hospital job and my engineering job, because I've been working on this novel for a while, if ever I had a spare moment, or even if I was just standing there like cleaning glasses or something, I'd let my mind wander, and often it would wander to my novel and it would come up with these scene ideas, and I guess that comes from being an actor. It would always be like, what about this scene? But that's a script writing technique. If you ever have specific scenes you have in mind, you can work the novel or the script so that they slot in. But letting your mind wander and having bits of paper, I have thousands of bits of paper that I had to collate. Bear saw them, I like opened this book and she was like all these little scraps of paper, and I'm like, are any of these still relevant? Sometimes they might not be. Sometimes you might write down ideas, read them back a couple of months later and you're like, that doesn't really work where I'm at anymore. Or you might read it and you'd be like, Past Luella was a genius, yes! My phone is full of like random notes that I look back at and I'm just like, that was some brain fart I had somewhere that I was like, this is brilliant.
But yeah, like writing them down in notes. I think
and like you say, noticing when it is a thought.
And like training yourself to notice like all the time. Like you said, keeping it in the front of your mind. I think that's all good for like initial concept creation. But if you find yourself halfway through, and say someone's writing and they find themselves halfway through, and they've started to be like, where does it go? How do I finish this? You said you listen to music when you get stuck with a scene. I listen to music too, but I'm a lot more stronger with my endings. I found through my degree and talking to other writers, people are either beginning people or ending people. I always start with the ending.
You hurt me.
Blue's just like, I must write it in
I have to write in chronological order because that's how my mind works. So when I write scripts as well, I think that's why I'm so drawn to theatre acting, because you work through it generally chronologically versus film where it's like, we're going to film the final scene and then the first scene, and I'm like, yes.
My novel Time in Fallen Leaves, in my Scrivener at the moment, I've got the 3 books for the trilogy, and I've got, I think out of the 60 chapters, because there's 20 chapters each, I've written about 50 of them, but there's 10 intermediate chapters scattered through that I haven't got filler content for. But like trying to work it out. But I've had the ending of the final book for the last 5 years.
Wow.
And it hasn't changed after 5 years. I've got so clear the last scene. It's just writing up until then.
Those scenes that you have, those scene ideas you have, they're always the easiest to write.
Yeah.
I think one of the easiest scenes for me to write was the ballroom scene in mine, because it's a concept. It's a concept I've always had in every novel I've ever attempted to write. I just want a ballroom scene. I just want a ballroom. Is that too much to ask? I just want her to have a dramatic moment where she's in a beautiful dress and everyone looks at her. But that was the easiest scene for me to write because it's a concept. It was a scene that came into my head ages ago. And similarly, the scene where she has her experience and she first gets her abilities, also an easy one for me to write because, again, it was a scene I'd seen a lot.
Yeah.
But like you say, those filler scenes, like that fight that I had to write where I was just like...
And that comes, like, you would just, like, make them both air signs. So it comes from knowing your characters. When you do get stuck with your concept, what would your character... Not what you would do in that situation, what would your character do? Because if you've built your character up enough, you'll figure it out. If you're halfway through a story and you don't know what your character will do,
you need to
fill out a character profile sheet.
Yeah. You can find them, like, you can literally just Google character profile sheets. At the very least,
Google images.
You just need to know what they look like, you need to know what their likes and dislikes are, and the biggest thing, and this is an acting thing as well, what do they want in life? What's their objective?
What's their goal and how are they not getting it?
Yeah.
That's
objective
the base
and obstacle
of all
is the
story.
basis of all tension. That's acting and writing.
Train yourself to know the concepts, to recognize them, keep it in the front of your brain, let yourself wander, don't wander too far because you end up in rabbit holes. Write everything down because you'll lose it. Don't say you'll remember it later. Won't.
You won't.
You won't.
You trust you won't.
I've been Bear.
I've been Lou. Flew out.
See, if you were to have that dream as current Lou, you'd probably be like, this is a sign to go buy pumpkin seeds now.
This is where I'm at. I dream about anything these days and I'm like, no, I have to get blue moonstone. I'm still waiting for it.
It's only been a month and a half.
Fine. I have powers. Yeah. But I got the chapter out.
Exactly.
I just had to make my 2 lead characters air signs
Who can't communicate.
Oh my god.
Air
Libra
signs-
and a Gemini, it's just
Air signs be like, I'm not gonna let you know how I'm feeling, but I'm gonna put this one passive-aggressive statement so you know that something's wrong.
I'm gonna take my anger at something entirely different out on you.
Honestly, no one's on Korea's level. I will be getting rice cakes at midnight. Every night. I gotta hear the ajashi and I'm gonna be like, it's rice cake time. Me reading fan fiction. It's not complete. It's tagged complete. It's not complete. They lied to me. As an author, you'll never know what happens. Make your own ending, peasant. I'm just thinking of the note, because I went through the notes on my phone recently and just one of them was like from 2 years ago and it was like, found wife number 2 today, and I was just like, where? What? Thanks for the detail, past bear. Just casually, just so you know, future bear, this happened. Fusion. I think for...
Sorry, Harry Potter there. Just
Felix Felicis, Slughorn, Harry, my dear boy. Aragog, not to be insensitive, just going to rip off a fang.